we got a lot of people that live in HOAs, and I think he's solved some of the problems for HF and an HOA. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Corey, and you can introduce yourself, and it's all yours.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. Really appreciate the kind introduction and appreciate you having me here tonight to speak with you all. As you mentioned, I'm Corey, KD3CR, and your timing was good. This is actually going to be the first of 4 talks on this same subject that I'm going to be giving to ham clubs, literally from coast to coast, just in this month alone. Given a couple of them before, but it's really a topic that I feel, pardon the ham radio pun, seems to be resonating with a lot of people. So I will pull up my, it says host is disabled, participant screen sharing.
No.
Is there any way to enable that so I can
Yes,
pull up my
there is.
slides here?
Just a moment.
All right, thanks, Doc.
Still got that.
Okay, that should have enabled you, Corey. Give it a try.
All right, perfect. Yep, that's got it. So I'll pull that up there.
There we are. Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, so as Rob mentioned, I'm going to be talking about an attic antenna that really works quite well for HOAs. It's called the BBTD, or the Broadband Butterfly Terminated Dipole. As you see on there, it actually gets you on all bands, even from an attic. Yes, it is possible. Oh, yeah, there we go. Over the next 35 minutes or so, I'm going to give you real quick a look at who I am, a little background into the antenna journey, how I got here, and then we're going to dive right into the antennas, presenting 2 versions of it. So there's the attic version that is the primary one I use there. That's the first one, the BBTD. And then I tried out an outdoor backyard version of it that you can deploy even in a very small yard. That's the backyard broadband delta loop. I'm going to answer 3 kind of primary questions with those. First, what are they? How do you build one? And perhaps the most important question, how well do they work? Because if they don't work that well, they're not much good to anybody. I'm not an antenna engineer or anything. I didn't design these, but this is going to be a good practical look at an antenna that worked for me and hopefully will work for many of you as well. So you can see there, I got licensed in 2016 originally as KG5PXQ, upgraded to general a few months later, and then 3 years, sorry, after that, just before everything blew up for the pandemic, got my amateur extra ticket. I'm the current president of the Queen Anne's Amateur Radio Club over here in Centerville, Maryland, and also involved with the Queen Anne's County Races team, Potomac Valley Radio Club, which is an East Coast-based contesting club, and a member at large of my old club in Los Alamos, New Mexico, Los Alamos Amateur Radio Club. Now, this may be a familiar problem for some of you. You know, you really get excited about getting on HF. You study for your general, you pass the test, but your HOA doesn't allow antennas. It can be a bit of a buzzkill, to say the least. So if you live in a place like this, a townhome, an apartment, you're certainly not going to be able to put up any Yagi antenna farms like that. Any conspicuous antennas are off the table pretty much right away. So is it even possible to work HF from an HOA? Sarcastically, a lot of folks will say, oh, just move, haha. But unfortunately, that's not a practical option for many of us. So with those restrictions in mind, what's the goal? I mean, I for me, wanted to make HF contacts from home, access as many bands as possible with one antenna, because with antenna real estate at a huge premium for here, the more bands I can get on, the better, because I can have more fun on the air. Has to be affordable. Ideally wanted it to be a permanent install, so I didn't have to keep setting it up, taking it down. And perhaps most importantly, it had to be very stealthy. Don't want the HOA police coming after me. So let's take a higher level look. What are the types of options? Like if you live in an HOA, how can you get on HF? Certainly you can slap an antenna on your car, operate mobile. As far as I know, HOAs don't regulate antennas that you can put on your car. But with that platform, it severely limits your antenna size. You're pretty much looking at a ham stick or maybe a screwdriver antenna. But with the very limited size, your performance is going to suffer as well as your bandwidth. And you're going to be limiting yourself to battery or alternator power. You can go portable, which is a nice quiet RF environment. You can take as big an antenna as you can carry, but you got to travel to and from that place, set it up and take it down every time, and operate battery or solar panel, solar power. If you want to do remote, like remotehamradio.com, they let you work big superstations up to legal limit power, 1500 watts from anywhere. All you need is an internet connection. You can literally, work it from your cell phone, laptop, anything like that. But the drawback, and it is a big one, is the cost. They charge $100 a year plus a per minute charge of anywhere from 50 cents to $2, which doesn't sound like a lot at first until you realize that if you're working, say, 12 hours of a contest over a course of a weekend for field day, something like that, 12 hours times 60 minutes times the $2, plus that $100 a year just to get in the door, you've already spent $1,500, and that could buy you a nice transceiver. So that's not an option for me. Then on the tube on the right-hand side, you can set up a temporary backyard antenna or attic antenna. Advantage to both of those, you can work on grid power. You don't have to travel anywhere. With the temporary backyard one, you do have to set it up and take it down every time. And at least in my case, there are very few trees for supports. Moving up into the attic, you can operate any time. You set it up once and you're done. But you do have to suffer with a little bit higher RF noise, and both the size and height of your attic are kind of fixed, and does limit the size and height above ground of your antenna. So you see here, this is a satellite view of my QTH here. It is an end unit townhome. The entire property is 100 feet long by just 37.5 feet long. And being an end unit townhome, you don't actually have access to all four sides either of the perimeter, only 3 there. And I've just got 2 trees. Unfortunately, they're close together and very short, which doesn't help me much for setting up antennas. There's one in the back that a couple branches go over onto my property line, but that's my neighbor's tree. And the attic is only 32 by 22 feet and just 7.5 feet high at the apex. One advantage, it is above a second story, so it gives me a little bit of height, but you're looking at basically 25-30 feet above ground level. So when I first started looking onto how to get onto HF from my property, on the left, that was the first thing I tried, was a buddy pole that I had bought actually when I lived in New Mexico. Set this up in the backyard and had pretty limited success. From there, moved on to a short end-fed random wire. This one was 33 feet long. I could just barely stretch it from corner to corner. Both of these were pretty noisy, pretty limited, made a handful of contacts, but not anything ideal. So moving beyond that, thinking, what the heck can I do? A lot of people, or some people anyway, have heard about loading up gutters. Unfortunately, mine aren't even all connected to each other, which means they're short, they're segmented, and not that great for antennas. You can set up a flagpole antenna. I've heard a lot about those. But my front yard, as you saw in the other image there, is pretty tiny, which limits the radial field, which is very important for that kind of antenna. And believe it or not, my HOA actually prohibits poles very vaguely. You could put up an attic-mounted mag loop. Problem with those is they're quite expensive, ranging anywhere from $400 or $500 upwards to $1,000 and beyond. Most of them are limited to QRP power at the basis of their capacitor limitations, preventing arc over, and they have very limited bandwidth, meaning you have to usually retune every few kilohertz when you're tuning around. Another option could be ham sticks mounted in your attic, but those are monobanded, and you're going to need 2 per band. And as we talked about with operating mobile, they're very short, which limits your performance. So none of those were that appealing to me. So I just kept looking, kept researching, seeing what I could find, and stumbled across this one, which is originally designed by Bonnie Crystal, KQ6XA.
Oh, we know
And
Bonnie.
oh, wonderful. Yeah, her website there is a great resource. And when I found this, I thought, like, finally, maybe I've got something that'll work here. Her website, hflink.com, was actually down for several months since kind of mid last summer, but literally just in the last few days, it's come back online again. So you should be able to go to that link and find all of the resources that she's got on there. If it goes down again for whatever reason, and what I was prepared to tell you all about today is you can go to the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine and find snapshots of it as it existed before, and it's got all the details on there too. For anyone who's familiar with a beverage antenna or a terminated folded dipole, this is actually a cousin to those. It's a traveling wave antenna. And what that means is that the RF travels in one direction only, unlike a dipole or others that resonate, meaning they go in two directions back and forth. With it traveling only in one direction, the waves that would normally be reflected are instead absorbed by a 1,000 ohm resistor on the one end, and you feed it on the other end with a high impedance balun that's 16:1. So why would you want to build one of these? Well, you'll see in a moment they're very inexpensive. They're easy to build, can set one up in a couple of hours. They're completely stealthy because they're hidden in your attic. Very broad banded. It's actually less than 2-to-1 SWR continuously from 160 through 6 meters without needing the use of a tuner. The size is extremely flexible. You can feed it with 50 ohm coax. You don't have to mess around with ladder lines or anything like that. And it does give you some limited gain on the higher bands, just 1 to 2 dB. Drawbacks, of course, this is a compromise. It's going to be inefficient on the low bands, ranging from 1 S unit below a full-size dipole on 20, 2 units below a dipole on 40, and 3 S units below on 80 meters. But being inefficient doesn't mean it won't get out, and doesn't mean you won't be making contacts, as we'll circle back to a little later on. Being mounted in an attic and horizontally polarized does mean you're not going to get a ton of low angle radiation on the low bands, and attic antennas do tend to be noisier than those in the clear. So here we've got an antenna model that Friendly Ham built for me. He was someone who saw my original presentation at the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo and put this in Easy NEC and sent it along to me. On the top, in the middle, and on the right-hand side is your plots for 20 meters. You can see that it's fairly omnidirectional. It does tend to have a little bit more gain in the direction of the resistor on 20 meters, as well as pretty good broadside bandwidth with a bit of a nub back towards the balun. It does give you some pretty good low angle radiation though, at 35 or so degrees, pretty solid at the horizon, which is going to give you some pretty good DX. On the bottom there, you'll see the 40-meter plot, which is starting to look a bit more spherical, sending a lot more of that radiation up in a bit more of an NVIS pattern, but doesn't mean it's not getting any out towards the horizon. These two are really illustrative of how I saw the performance later, in that 20 meters and higher in frequency tends to start to favor a little bit more in the direction of the resistor, and the 40 meters tends to favor a little bit more the other way and at broadside. So in terms of what you need to build this, it's very simple. You need the kind of the magic of the antenna is the balun. This is a 16:1 you can get at Palomar Engineers or other places for about 80 bucks. And if you're so inclined, you can actually build one for probably about a quarter of that, just with some toroids and wire. And instructions for that are on hflink.com there as well. You're going to need some antenna wire, as much as you can get into your attic. And the terminating resistor is ideally 1,000 ohms. You're going to want to have that rated for the amount of power that you're going to want to run through it, which in my case was 100 watts. I don't recommend putting too much more than that through it if you're going to be having it in an attic, but to each your own. Ideally, you would really want to have a non-inductive resistor, which Palomar Engineers does sell as well. But when I was first building this, I didn't know how well it was going to work or if it was going to work at all. And the cost difference was pretty substantial. The non-inductive is about 80 or 90 bucks. I picked up these wire wound ones on Amazon for $4. Figure start with this, and if it starts to show moderate success, I can always upgrade. But actually, this one has worked so well that I never felt the need to switch it out. Other things you've probably got kicking around at home already is soldering iron and some solder, heat shrink tubing, and some standoff insulators for actually mounting it. I picked up a bag of electric fence insulators, whole bag of them for I think $5, and I only used even half of them. So how do you build it? Well, kind of mapping this along in the top right. So we're starting on the resistor end. You want to take 2 lengths of wire of roughly equal lengths and solder one end of each to your resistor. If you want to kind of clean it up a little bit, you can cover that with heat shrink tubing, but you certainly don't have to. Hang that then at one end of your attic, roughly waist to chest height, about halfway between the floor and the ceiling. And then you want to run the wire up to the ceiling in a roughly V shape, as you see in the diagram there as well. From there, just run the wire down to the corner where it meets the floor. When it does that, turn it and run it towards the far side of your attic, trying not to hit your head on the nails poking through, which I only did once. From there, you kind of reverse it. So bring the wire back up towards the apex. Once you're close to there, bring it down in a V shape and connect to the ballon on either side with the wing nuts. From there, just connect your coax, run it down into your shack, and you're all set. You see at the bottom of the image on your right there that I've got a few turns of the coax held together just as a coax choke. You can certainly do that or not as your preference. If you don't want to do that, you can also do a 1-to-1 choke ballon. Okay, there we go. 1-to-1 choke ballon. Are you still seeing my slides? It kicked me out of the share screen. Okay, I will reshare that. There we go. Or you can use a line isolator below the feed point if you wish. Just knowing that attic antennas are a little bit noisier, I was trying to minimize the noise and common mode current going through there as much as I could. More wire is better, and the more wire you get up there, that's going to improve your performance on the lower bands especially. But the exact length is not critical at all. Just make sure it's roughly equal within 6 feet on either side. For reference, I used 125 feet, but use whatever you like, and it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical like you saw in the diagram there. If you have to zigzag it, move it around corners depending on the exact layout and situation of your attic, that's perfectly fine. Obviously, the higher the better for mounting this, but if your home is just 1 story, don't worry, you can still build this, it'll still work. You're just going to have obviously a little bit more of that radiated energy going up instead of to the horizon. And the length of coax also doesn't matter. So once I got it built, I tested it with the SWR, and as advertised, it gives you less than 2-to-1 from 160 through 6 meters. And in fact, 160 through 15 were 1.5-to-1 or less.
Wow.
Yeah, it actually it wasn't advertised for this at all, but I tested it on 2 meters and even has usable SWR at the bottom of 2 meters, being 1.5-to-1 at 144 megahertz. Don't want to speculate on the lobes you might get, but it does work for that. And if you wanted to use it for CW or FT8 on 2 meters, it'd be worth a shot. The
I
upper
guess you
right.
hadn't modeled this yet, Corey?
I hadn't modeled it at this time on 2 meters, and the models that I do have were shared in those earlier slides. So I was just testing it out, seeing what I could do with it.
Amazing.
The image in the top right is the entire HF spectrum from 0 through 54 megahertz, and you can see never really gets above that 2-to-1 line, except right at 0 megahertz basically. And then from left to right on the bottom, 80, 40, and 20, you can see at a couple of different points there, it's practically 1-to-1, which was outstanding. Now, certainly there's a lot of criticisms tend to come in at this point in the presentation saying, yeah, SWR isn't everything. A dummy load has low SWR too. At that height, it's just a cloud warmer. There's too much loss. The resistor ruins it. It won't work. But I don't think you can do this with a dummy load. This is in the last 18 months with the one in my attic, over 1,000 QSOs so far, 650 confirmed across 4 continents. I've gotten worked all states, and I'm over halfway to DXCC with 100 watts or less from a Maryland attic. I'm continually floored with how well this thing works. Like, it shouldn't work this good, but it does.
Something right.
What mode is that? What mode were those QSOs made in?
Well, that's actually the next slide here. As folks would say, okay, you're getting a lot of contacts, but surely that's all FT8, right? Nope. This is the mix, CW, SSB, and digital. And actually, most of these contacts, or more of the states and more of the DXCC entities were phone, SSB. 44 of my 50 states I got on phone, 37 on CW, and 35 on FT8. And the DXCC entities, I've got 34 on phone, 31 on FT8, and 20 on CW so far. The CW numbers are a little bit lower because when I first put this up, I hadn't learned CW yet. So I've only learned it and started using it in contests and on the air really for about half of that span, like in the last 6 to 8 months, 9 months or so. So bringing that map up again, but with broken out by mode. For those who are red-green colorblind, I apologize. Red is CW, phone or SSB is green, and digital is yellow. And basically anywhere you look on there is looking like a Christmas tree because the lights are, or the banners there are all different types. And it's worth noting there as well that for usually the hardest states to get, especially for over here on the East Coast, Alaska and Hawaii, neither one of those was digital. I got Alaska on 15 meter sideband, and Hawaii there was 40 meter CW. Just real quick, I'll run through the bands here. 6 meters, I don't spend a whole lot of time on, but you can see that's given me mostly local, but I did get a nice opening out into the Midwest a couple times there with CW and phone out into Iowa, Minneapolis area, and Chicago. 10 meters is where you start to see a little bit more of the DX. 10 through 20, it's really favoring the broadside and to the south, which for me is great because it's getting a lot of contacts through the Caribbean, South America, all the way down into Argentina and Chile. 15 meters is much of the same, but with a little bit better broadside out in all the way into Eastern Europe, Ukraine, to the west up into Anchorage, all through the west coast, and down even further south, hitting Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Uruguay. 20 meters, get a little bit more of the same, but slightly less. It starts to kind of pull back from the southern direction and increases a little bit more for me east to west, which is roughly the broad sides of the antenna, but still getting some South America and all through Europe there as well. 40 meters, it pulls back from the resistor end even more, but nice broadside, really, from Hawaii through to Eastern Europe as well. And then 80 meters, really the efficiency and height limitations start to show there. And you see it works great NVIS out to about 700 miles or so, but for me, I had no contacts so far west of the Mississippi. I don't spend a lot of time in the work bands, but thought I'd throw them up just so you could see them for the limited amount I have done. 12 and 17 meters give nice coverage from the west coast of the US for me through into Eastern Europe and down into the middle of South America. And 30 meters, I do even less, but some good coverage out into Arizona on that one. So, all right, it's working great. Life is good, but of course, as hams, we always like to tinker with stuff, and they think, oh, can I do better? Can I get even more performance out of this? Which led me back to Bonnie's website and looking at a backyard version of it. So this is the backyard broadband Delta Loop, and using a retractable fiberglass pole, I can actually get the entire antenna hidden behind the confines of my fence. So it's outdoors, but it's still stealthy. Theoretically higher potential maximum height, especially if you were in a one-story home. This can get that up a little higher. It does use more wire, or you can use more wire with it. I used, in this case, 300 feet instead of 125. It's the same inexpensive design, easy to set up and take down if you're using those retractable poles. You do also get a mix of your horizontal and vertical polarizations because you've got that initial vertical component. And other features that it shares with the attic version, less than 2-to-1 SWR across the bands, still pretty low gain though. So the only real difference in the materials was the addition of what I used was a 40-foot spider beam pole. Certainly nothing special or magical about that brand or that size. You could use kind of whatever you've got, or whatever you can find. Or if you don't want to have it be retractable, you could put up a connector and insulator high up on your outdoor wall, and just loop it into that, kind of whatever you like. So in terms of actually building it, I started with the mast, set that up just temporarily with a couple of C-clamps in one corner of the yard. Obviously, if you were doing this as a permanent setup, you might want to secure it a little more, but that worked well for being up for a day or two. As you're running the wire up the pole, raise it as it goes along, and optionally, you can secure the wire as you go with zip ties, bongo ties, something like that, and just prevents it from kind of flopping around in the wind. From there, you want to run the wire from the top of the pole down to the nearest corner, and then run it along the other two sides of the top of your fence. Then bring it down to either the middle of your fence, or Bonnie said you can even have it go all the way to the ground, run it along the ground back to the pole. I did, excuse me, I did mine at the middle. So you've got the top part of it is along 6 feet from the ground, and the middle is maybe about 3.5 feet. Very low to the ground. I didn't expect too much from that, but we'll see the results in a moment. And this image here, you can see, or maybe you can't, the wire does go along the top of the fence there, loops around the one fence pole, comes down to the middle, and goes along back to the other side. If you weren't looking for this, even if you're staring right at it, you wouldn't notice it. You wouldn't know it's there. So very stealthy. Once you get it back to the pole, attach the other end of your wire to the balun. The part that goes vertical up the pole, you ideally want to have as the hot side of the balun. For me, that was the left side in terms of staring at it from the label, but you can do continuity testing there just to double check that it's that one for you as well. Then go back to the middle of the wire, cut it there, and attach your resistor so you've got roughly equal amounts on either side. Obviously, if you were setting this up permanently, you would want to have this weatherproofed. Because I was just putting it up temporarily, I didn't worry about that, and just connected it in without soldering it or anything. But definitely want to do that if you're putting it up permanent. From there, just step back and admire your work. So this image on your left, you saw it earlier in the presentation, and probably didn't realize there was an antenna in that image, and you still probably can't see it there. The one on the right, this is partway along, still staring right at the antenna, but the house blocks it. In the trees, you can't see the wire, so it's virtually invisible until you get really right around to the beginning of my fence, like almost in my backyard. So walking along the sidewalk, being from the street driving by, you would never know it's there, even when it's deployed. So as with the other one, I started with some SWR testing, and like the other one, it was less than 2-to-1 across all of the HF bands. And this one was 1.5-to-1 or less from 12 through 160, no tuner needed. These here are per band plots. You've got starting with 6 meters here, 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, 30, 40, 60, which is a tricky band for some, 80, and 160, and then there's the full plot for 2 meters as well. This one was a little bit higher on 2 meters than the other one, I think mostly due to the longer wire length, but in an emergency you could still use this as a 2-meter antenna. So little testing on how it performs. This is going from the attic antenna, swapping the balun downstairs and plugging it into the backyard one, comparing band to band. This is using PSK reporter on FT8 just to see kind of real quick where I could be heard. On 12 meters, it was getting me a little bit into Europe on the backyard one, and no stations heard me on the attic at this time. 15 meters, you can see, pretty good into Europe on the attic antenna, but just more stations are hearing me with the backyard one, kind of all throughout Europe, and some down in Brazil as well. 17 meters, more of the same. The areas that I'm heard in the attic version, I'm being heard in the backyard one, but just more stations hearing me a little bit further. So instead of just halfway across the US, I'm being heard all the way to the West Coast. Instead of just Germany, Poland, kind of Central Europe, I'm being heard all the way up into Finland, Russia. So it's just that little bit extra from same amount of power, same time of day and everything else, but having that low angle radiation really helping. The odd ones were 20 and 30 and 40 during the day, when for some reason the attic one was giving me better performance. Kind of the flip-flop of before, I was being heard further out and more stations with the attic antenna on these bands. You see 30 meters as well. With the attic one, I was heard all the way to looks like Seattle, and down to the east, out into the Caribbean, all the way up into Maine. But the backyard one, I was really only heard in the eastern part of the US. 40 is almost an identical plot there during the day to 30 meters, but different story at night. Mentioned that the 40 meters has generally most of the RF energy going at quite a high angle on the attic antenna, but you see with this plot, it does not prevent necessarily DX. As you see, that one station there was heard all the way down in South Africa, and getting some good results out into Eastern Europe, really as far as the night-day line. But with the backyard version, again, more stations, a little bit further. It also added 40 meters, reaching down into South America, all the way down into Argentina, which is something I was not getting from the attic version. It did add a little bit better performance, 80 meters at night, being able to be heard down into the Caribbean. But again, just with the low efficiency of this design on 80, wasn't great there. The one band that I didn't showcase on here was 160, because as the decreasing efficiency, as you go down in frequency, 160 you really don't get out very well. Although I will say I've made one singular CW contact on 160 with the attic version of this antenna into Pennsylvania. So, not great on that band, but it can be done. So going back to that goals slide that we had earlier, I wanted to make HF contacts from home, access as many bands as possible with an affordable, permanent antenna ideally, and be very stealthy. And I think we checked all of those boxes. Conclusions of comparing those two antennas, we saw the backyard version slightly better than the attic one on most bands, aside from 20 and 30 and 40 during the day, but the performance was close. Certainly neither one is going to be able to beat a set of Yagis on a big tower or even a dipole for gain, but giving up some of that gain and efficiency, you get all HF bands, especially 80 through 10 or 6 meters, and a lot of flexibility. If you've got a big yard and a big budget, nothing's stopping you from setting up a Yagi or, lots of big full-sized antennas. In fact, be encouraged to do so. But if you've got a small yard and or an HOA, these antennas can be the difference between getting on HF or not. And when that's the options, I would take this antenna any day of the week. So the bottom line, it gets you on the air, making contacts and having fun, even from an attic. Will it work for you? Well, why not give it a try? So that is the end of my presentation, and happy to take any questions you've got. But I'll pop to this slide here real quick. If anyone wants a copy of these slides, you can scan the QR code here or go to that bit.ly link, and there's a PDF version that you can freely download, share with your friends, anything like that, no problem at all. And my contact information is there as well if anyone wants to email me afterwards if you've got additional questions, but happy to take any questions now.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Corey. What we'll do here, so we don't get a pile up, is Ben, any questions on the chat that we can identify right off the bat? Let's take those. How about that?
Okay, there's a whole bunch of questions on the chat.
So why don't we go back to the gallery so we can see all their faces? And if, oh, I'm sorry. They're looking for the QR code. Go ahead and share your screen one more time.
Sorry about that. Yeah, of course. Put that back up there. Too quick on the draw.
You gonna be able to get that from way back there? Oh, okay. You want to start or wait? Oh, hang on a second. Let me make sure everybody's. I see some phones still up, pointing at the screen. Of course, we do have the your email address there, so I'm sure if we need more, we can always contact you there.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Okay. All right. If we need that back, just let us know. But let's go to the back to the gallery screen, and then let's see if we can get some of these chat questions done here, since that's the bigger audience. So,
Okay, so one is the pole up permanently?
The one that I did, I retracted it when I wasn't using it, just to get it below the fence line, and then anybody walking by, any of the neighbors in the backyards wouldn't see it at all. But you certainly could put this up permanently. As I showed with those couple of pictures, even with it fully deployed at 40-foot height, it was completely hidden behind the house with a two-story home. So probably would have similar results.
Well, I heard from recently on our one of our daily nets that there's an HOA resident and they have the audacity to now do drone patrol. So
Really?
Oh,
Wow, wow.
God, the HOA police, help, please. Save us.
so yeah, I think you'll have to make around here we may have to make it drone safe. But anyway, okay, Andy KR60D, that was your question. Did you have anything further? Caught him off guard. All right, we'll let you come back in a second. Go ahead, Ben. Who was
Okay,
next?
the next one is maybe you could ask your neighbor to cooperate with you. I guess that's
Oh,
more a
yeah.
comment than a question.
Yeah. Well, I am friendly with my neighbors, and the one who's got the tree in the backyard has graciously allowed me to use it temporarily when I need it, and did a couple of times for field day during the pandemic. Managed to shoehorn a 135-foot 80 through 10 end-fed half wave, believe it or not, in that 100-foot long property, going from the one fence post up into her tree, using both of my trees and tying it off at the one in the front. But doing it that way, it was a little bit more visible from the front. Anyone walking by on the sidewalk, and didn't want to use or take advantage of her tree permanently. But could be an option, depending on your situation.
Stealth
right.
antennas. Oh, man.
Next one is, what is your roof made of? Composites shingles versus wood shingles in Maryland's Eastern Shore, wood shingles, question mark.
Our shingles here are, at least in our neighborhood, are asphalt, which would probably attenuate the signal somewhat, but not too badly. I've got my 2-meter vertical antenna up in the attic there as well, at 2 meter 70 centimeter, and that gets me into repeaters 40-50 miles away, no problem. So even at those wavelengths, it works pretty good. Obviously, if you had a metal roof, like metal shingles, or the metallic vapor barrier, radiant barrier up there, that would pretty much kill the potential for any kind of attic antenna up there. But you can test that by bringing a radio, just like a AM/FM radio, up into your attic, and if the music stops going, then there'll be no joy up there. But in that situation, the backyard one might be able to work for you.
Then we have wattage of the termination resistor. I think you said it was whatever you want to use.
Yeah, so mine was 100 watts because I was going to be doing 100 watts or less power into it. Since it's in the attic, you probably don't want to run too much power. And regardless of how much you do run with it, I would definitely recommend doing one of the RF safety evaluations with the calculator on ARRL's website or elsewhere. If you were working on the lower bands, you might be able to get away with a bit more power than that, but because you're having it in fairly close proximity to all your housing wiring and that type of thing, you might be inviting a little bit more potential for some interference the more power you run. Even at 100 watts on CW on 30 meters, my dits and DAWs will sometimes turn on the washer and dryer downstairs. So something to look at. My wife always thinks like, oh, you're doing laundry. Oh, wait, no, he's upstairs. so something to consider. But if you keep the power down, it's not too bad.
And then we have a few comments here, which I'll let you respond to. So one is, I imagine on CW, maybe a neighbor might detect your signal. My kids complain they could hear my CW through their headphones on computer games.
I've wondered about that, and so far, none of my neighbors have mentioned anything to me. Not all of my neighbors know that I'm a ham, and there's good reason for that, because the more that know, the more the potential for getting reported to the HOA police. But at least the ones immediately on either side are aware that that I'm a ham, and none of them have mentioned anything about any interference to any of their devices at all. So, anecdotally at least, seems to be pretty good.
And we have, it would be interesting to compare this to an outdoor dipole or loop, but this sure gives hope to HOA bound hams.
Absolutely. Yeah. I haven't set up that end-fed half wave at the same time as the either the backyard or attic antenna to do a completely A to B comparison. But I know that from working those field days with the outdoor one, I was heard out to California, Washington, so like all throughout the US, but didn't hear any DX with that one. Unlike with these BBTD and variants here. So it could have just been that the DX was staying away because it was field day, or it could be that that one wasn't hearing as well. But that same antenna set up in the park before, park near my house, I was able to hear Japan, France, a few others. So I suspect that it would be pretty comparable.
One final question from the chat. What lightning protection do you use?
So because my attic is up on the second floor and my shack is in the second floor, in order to get a ground out to to the actual ground or to where the utility ground is, it would be quite a long run. I've looked at upgrading mine and just doing something like a 4-gauge bare copper wire, run it out along the house and out to that. Haven't done so yet. So for right now, the only protection basically that I've done with that is I disconnect my antennas, both the attic one and the 2-meter vertical whenever I'm not using them. And certainly if a storm is coming through, disconnecting it well in advance. I've got a lightning detector app on my phone that tells me if it's within 50 miles. But if you were doing this on a first floor, maybe that's a little bit easier to do. And certainly if you were doing the outdoor antenna where the ground is a little closer, I would recommend doing the proper grounding with the ground rod and all that.
Okay, and why don't we do this? Anybody in Zoom land have more questions? Find your little icon there and raise your hand, or let me see if I can pull through a pileup if you don't all ask at once. So let me throw it over to Zoom there again. If
Welcome to N6NFI repeater TL100.
Andy's the culprit. Andy, mute. Any questions? Okay. How about anybody here in Cumberland? Okay, we got I got a mic, Ben.
Oh, you do?
If you want to just flip that camera this way, I don't have to rove.
Got a simple question, actually. On the attic antenna itself, it says your materials themselves 150 feet of 14-gauge wire. And basically to get it all around the attic, all the way around the parameter of the attic, I understand. But what if your attic's not very large? How long would that wire actually be inside your attic? Do you overlap or to use the entire 150 feet or what?
Well, I only used 125 of the 150 feet. That's what worked for me to get around the full perimeter. If your attic is smaller than that, you can certainly use less wire. If it's bigger than that, you can use more. The only real difference is the more wire you've got up, you get slightly better performance on the low bands, and the less wire, you get slightly better performance on the high bands. But this design is completely adaptable to whatever length you can put up there. And there's one of the hams who saw one of the earlier presentations I did for the QSO Today Ham Fest had pointed out that this could be something that could work for hams in like retirement homes, apartments, even in hospital rooms, and wondered how small you can scale it. So I haven't done so yet, but one of my next projects is going to be to set it up just in this home office room, which I mean, I'd probably maximum be able to fit maybe 20 feet in this room and just see how well it does. Not expecting too much from something that small, but just to see what it could do.
I'm certainly not a antenna modeler in any form or matter, but What about a trap? Would that help in small sections?
I think it could potentially.
I don't know.
Yeah, the terminating resistor absorbs a lot of the excess energy that goes through, so keeps the SW bar down. But if you didn't want to use that, one of the suggestions that Bonnie had for the backyard antenna that could also work for this is if you connected it completely as a loop. So took the resistor out of it and didn't have it terminated, you could use a remote tuner instead. And so if you were doing it in that situation, a trap or loading coils or something like that might get you maybe a little bit better on the lower bands. But yeah, it'd be worth investigating.
Okay, thanks. And did I see Andy, you back? Did you have a question, Andy? AR6DD.
I
Right.
muted him, so maybe we can't hear him because of that.
There he is. Gotta unmute, Andy, unmute. Oh, you are unmuted. We're not getting any audio. You've got two Andys up, so you maybe use the other one. The other one. Okay, Andy, your audio is not coming through, so I'm not sure. We'll get back to you. You can either use a little raise your hand icon or put something in the comments again. Anybody else here in Cumberland have questions? Questions? Oh, okay. All righty. Andy's gone to the other screen. Oh, Andy, you back? Nope. You gotta unmute your audio now.
Yeah, I'm still not hearing anything.
You got some technical difficulties, Andy. Sorry, we're not hearing you here. All right. If you want to put your question in the chat, let's do that. Yeah, go ahead and go back to your chat screen and put your question there and we'll try that. You're typing good. Corey, remind me again what city you're in?
I'm in Annapolis, Maryland, just northeast of the city proper, and about 35 miles east of Washington, D.C.
Okay, I was born in Tacoma Park.
Okay,
How
nice.
far away that is from there in Maryland, but I didn't live there very long. I do remember some of the memories out there on the East Coast.
Yeah, I'm just a couple of miles from the Chesapeake Bay.
We have another question back here, so hang on a second. I was. There you go.
Thank you. Corey, I was wondering, I talked to Ham at the Wednesday luncheon earlier this week about the use of a screwdriver antenna for a stealth setup, normally found on an automobile.
Mm-hmm.
Just wondering if that is a viable tool or obviously you need to put some grounding or some some wires or a surface which will reflect will be take the place of an automobile. But I was just wondering if that has ever been a thought for a stealth setup. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that could certainly work. You would want to set up a radial field, or some folks have set up like a chicken wire or something like that, and then planted grass over top of it. But you definitely would need some kind of ground to work it against. I think a screwdriver generally would be fairly short. Probably get a little bit better performance than from a ham stick, but with the loading coils, that might not be terribly efficient either. But certainly could work. I think it would be a little bit too tall for an attic, but if you mounted it outside with a radial field, that would be worth a shot.
Cool. And Andy did get his comment, and it was more of a comment than a question. He was just saying that the antenna behaves like a flag antenna, which is a cover story on the April 2021 QST. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that antenna. But
Yeah, I think if I remember right from that one, I think the author did a off-center fed dipole within a 35 or so foot. Oh, Andy's saying maybe no.
maybe no.
So he
That's
got a
okay.
30% larger one and did 4 NEC2 analysis. Patterns are similar.
Corey, thank you so much for your time. It was very informative. Quartz Fest has been going on for many, many, many years. This is my 4th year. It's now in a affiliated ARRL convention or an event now. And it's 6 miles south of the city of Quartzsite, Arizona. And it's basically ham radio meets boondocking. And it's been a great time. So I threw together a quick summary of my endeavors. And Doug, I'm going to share my screen and we'll go through this real quick. Come on. There we go. There we go. Yep, trying to get to my animation screen, but come on. I've got Zoom in my way. Yep, there we go. Now, if my remote works okay, we'll be good to go. Let me lower my gallery screen to that. Oh, no problem. Okay. All right. So Quartz Fest 2023. And I'll just start from beginning to the end here. First off, it's not all about the quartz. So Quartzsite, you might recall, is like the gem capital of the world. Well, at least Arizona, maybe. It's a little small town and they make a lot of money on their little shops with all kinds of gems, quartz. History of Quartzsite is a lot of mining for quartz and minerals and other things. And so the town is kind of focuses on that. But there's no active mining now out there that I know of, but that's its history. But what I did find interesting is the first year I was there, I'm noticing all these little statues and reference to camels. And so I did some research and I'll read this real quick. The Senator Jefferson Davis found the Army needed to improve transportation in the Southwest U.S. On March 3, 1855, the U.S. Congress appropriated $30,000 for this project. A report entitled Purchase of Camels for the Purpose of Military Transport was issued by Davis, and on February 10, 1857, the Army had 70 camels. There's a lot of backstory. It took 2 trips. A couple of camels died, but 1 camel was pregnant, so they got 2, so they got 1 extra. And then they did another trip. This is all coming from Africa or wherever, or the Middle East somewhere. I forget which countries. And they ended up with 70 camels altogether. Also in 1857, in response to citizen petition to establish a road connecting the East and the West, Congress authorized a contractor to survey a wagon road along the 35th parallel from Fort Defiance, New Mexico territory to the Colorado River on what is now the Arizona-California border. So they sent 25 of those camels and a mule train set off to do this reconnaissance. They also hired on camel drivers where they purchased the camels in the Middle East to come over here to herd all these camels and help with them as well. Each camel could carry 600 pounds. The report back to Congress states that the camel were proven to be successful. And so several other additional reconnaissances were commissioned. I left some of this out, but the camels rarely needed water, whereas the mules and horses did. And you can guess these, I mean, the camels were just exceptional, except for a couple things. Apparently some of the terrain in the desert were splitting their hoofs more than the other animals. So there were some pros and cons. Unfortunately, during the Civil War, the Army had no further interest in the animals and they were sold at auction in 1864. The last animals from California were reportedly seen in Arizona in 1891. Apparently, when the war started off, they weren't doing a lot of hauling, and the camels were easily spooked when during war battles and stuff, and whereas the mules and horses were better equipped for close battle environment, I guess. So didn't want to get kicked by a camel, I guess. That wouldn't be a good thing. So let me move my screen here out of the way. To this day, you'll see visual references to the camels in Quartzsite, and I've got the one on the left. As you enter Quartzsite on different highways, you'll see that. And in 1935, Arizona Governor Benjamin Muir, I don't know how to pronounce that, dedicated a monument for Haji Ali, also known as High Jolly, that is, and the camel corps in Quartzsite Cemetery. High Jolly was one of the original camel drivers hired by the Army, and a monument located at his gravesite is a pyramid built from local stones and topped with a copper camel, and is listed as a National Register of Historic Place. The monument is most visited in Quartzsite, and there's a picture of it. So anytime you go into Quartzsite, take a left on Main Street, go to that cemetery, you'll see it there. But anyway, that answers your question. Maybe if you're driving through the town and you see these camel signs, what does that mean? Not going to work now for me. There we go. All right. Our particular area that Quartzsite is set up on is in BLM land, Bureau of Land Management. We're about 6 miles south of the city. In between the Quartzsite and where we are other areas that are monitored, but those are membership areas for the most part. You pay a membership for the season. And with that, you get other amenities like trash, and I guess you can schedule the pooper cleanup people to come out and empty your RVs on a regular basis. Where we here at the Roadrunner location is free, 14-day stay, and you'll catch up with the camp host, and you get that little tag right there you see, and you put it in your window. I was in a tent, so I just left it in my car window. If they had any questions, it's right there. The first thing to do is find your area that you want to set up in. Since I was camping, we're in a camping area that's designated primarily for camping. I could really go anywhere, but since we don't have the luxury of a bathroom, the campers tend to stick in this area because they catered us with some porta potties for this event. Typically, they're not out there. The RVs are also no hookups. There's no electric, no sewer, no nothing. So they did offer 2 days with the company that handles the porta potties to come out, and they take caution tape, they put it on their RV, and for $55, I think they will take care of your black and gray water needs. And that was 2 days out of the event. So new tent this year. I went from a small little four-man tent that has the dome shape with the annoying shock cords that always pull apart when you're trying to put it through the sleeve. This here I saw on YouTube. It's a Coleman. They think they tout it as a 10-person tent, but I think you've got to be really super skinny or something. But anyway, it also has kind of an exoskeletal structure to it that allows me to pop it right up, and it was nice. I had a little bit of wind that doesn't make it nice to set this up in, so it took longer than normal, but once up, it was nice. You can see 2 cots. My wife went with me, and also I was able to set up my little radio table in the back for HF. Last year I had a separate tent for the Radio Shack. The temperature out there in the desert gets down to sometimes into the mid-30s. I think we had one cold night. So you definitely wanted one of these liquid propane buddy heaters. They are safe for enclosed areas. You're not going to die. And they are a blessing in this tent. However, I've learned recently that depending on the type of liquid propane cord you use, the hose, and other factors, I don't know. The inner tube area that regulates the propane to the igniter area, the pilot light, builds up with an oil residue. And sure enough, 2 nights using this, it started acting up and went dead. And everybody's friend is YouTube, right? So I did a little bit of research, and there was 2 things to do: take a Q-tip and some alcohol and put it into the where the pilot light shoots out, clean it out, start it. Yay, that worked for a little bit. And the other thing is to take it apart, take the little molded piping, little pipe where it regulates that liquid propane to there, take it out and actually dump the oil out. It can actually get enough residue in there that it's just not letting the propane. I tried on this particular model to do that, and it was turning into a mess, and I was afraid I wouldn't get it back together. So I just kept cleaning it, and eventually I got it to work consistently, but there was a couple nights where it was cold because I couldn't get it to fire up. So yeah, I need to figure out how. Maybe it's the hose I was using, but anyway, long story short, this definitely is a need on those cold nights. 2 of the nights, winds got up to the high 20s, gusts of 30 something. And I wasn't sure how well this tent was going to handle winds like that. So I made sure I had all the guidelines on the tent really taut. It made it. It was loud all night long because fluttering in the wind, and you think I'm going to end up in the Wizard of Oz. And then I think it was Thursday. During the day, winds got up to 25, but I had an outside canopy you'll see here, and I took that down each time because that certainly would have went up like a Mary Poppin event there. On this new tent, it's really nice. It has a front door and a back door. Open the back door, and guess what's back there? A shower. I got a new little privy shower that I set up here. And you can see the little collapsible 5-gallon bucket. You put about 3 gallons of water in it. I warm it up with some hot boiling water from the Coleman stove. And that's a little battery operated spigot there. And it's nice because if I go too much longer than 3 days, people probably don't want to get around me. So definitely a shower is nice. Water, rather than tote, multiple like, I don't know what even they come in, 2-gallon water jugs. I picked this up the first year I went. It's a 35-gallon barrel, and I put about 25 gallons of water in it. In town, there's 2 local RV little pit stop areas where you can drain your own tanks, your gray and black water, take care of propane, and they also have filtered water spigots everywhere. And I just take it over there and fill it up, and then I bring it and slide it onto this little mount here, and I've got water for all my cooking and washing dishes or whatever. Believe it or not, with 25 gallons in it, I keep it on its side in the back of my pickup truck. I use the cribbing there, that little top wood piece. It's all separate, so it doesn't slosh around on the way back into the camp. And I just take a cargo strap, and I flip it over the backside, and I just drag it off the tailgate, and it's a perfect match for the cradle there. And it works. If it drops, splash. Hopefully it doesn't break the PVC valve there. Otherwise, I'd probably just have to keep tipping it for water each time. My antenna this year was a a center-fed half-wave end-fed, which is really weird. Anyway, it's a long wire that Fred W6BST made for me for Parachute Mobile HF jumps. And it worked like a champ. You can see in my Rig Expert, he tuned it up for 20, as you can see, because during Parachute Mobile events, we traditionally didn't have a tuner. And so it's just got to be plug and play. However, I was using my 857 for this with a tuner, and I was able to get QSOs on 40 meters. So it corrected that high SWR there. So it worked really well. Had a lot of QSOs talking to Georgia. This guy wouldn't shut up. Talking about okay, I want to go to another QSO, but I didn't want to be rude. I got a little bit of contacts on winter field day, but that was the last day for us. And so I only had a little bit of time, and then it was time to watch the 49ers lose. There's my little radio setup. On the left was during the daytime. The sun shines on that tent and it like blinds you in the eye. It's like, I need to get a shade to throw over that next time. And then at nighttime, I was there taking some cues during the night. Everybody has their APRS kind of going down there. And it's interesting because you'll bring up APRS.fi and you'll see like in town, a couple of hits of APRS, but you know, the town's really not, there's not a whole lot of ham activity, but all of a sudden you'll come 6 miles down, you'll see this cluster of hams. And you'll notice, does my cursor work on the screen there? No, it's not working. Oh yeah, it is. There it is. Right where I'm circling, you'll see behind this other icon, a picnic table. That's my call sign, KC62ID. And you'll see this red cross, as I was designated first aid based on my profession. And so I thought I'd leave that up there for a while. So if people saw it on the APRS, they know where I am. There you go. On Thursdays, there's this gentleman who has been the tour guide for a 4-wheel drive excavation. I went last year. It was fun. This year, I opted to stay in back and do some other things. But I think they probably had about 57 cars. If you didn't have a 4-wheel drive, you can find someone who's got a spot in their car. And they took off. And this time they went kind of southeast. And once again, people were pinging their APRS. So if you brought APRS up, you can see where they went. And that's probably a 3 or 4 hour excursion. You take your lunch out. It's pretty fun. You see a lot of the different flora, cactus, that one special cactus that really, if you touch it, it hurts. This is the special event station that they bring.
Where'd you go, Rob? We lost you.
Like we lost Rob's audio in 6 years.
Yeah, we did. Hello, Rob. Okay.
Please stand by. Corrections are being made.
So we hope.
You talk to Jim at all down there? SoCal?
Uh-oh. I see. Okay, we lost him, and let's get him back in. Yeah, man.
All right, Doug, you got us back?
Got you now. Thank you.
Yeah, our internet went dead, but you didn't miss anything. I think we caught it.
Lost about 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh, really?
Go back one slide. You were we didn't hear anything on the previous slide. There you go.
All right. Oh, okay, cool. So this was the special event station that's sponsored by the Northern Arizona DX Association, basically a GOTA station. So you can go in there and they had like 3 or 4 stations. Very impressive actually in there. The downside that I was saying is that little blue canopy in the back is my tent. And so that 3-element beam there and the other long wires they had going, if they had, QSOs going, it really blew me out of the water and I had to go to the different band or go to the other side of the band that I was using. So sometimes there's a little bit of competition with that. All right, there was 2 groups that had balloons. Unfortunately, the Pico balloon guy, that's the guy that was going to launch 3 balloons all together for the week. And those are the ones that go up and then they're designed to float around the world. I think last year's it went around some astronomical 4 times or something. I don't know. 14. Holy. Oh boy. Okay. There you go. This group here is the Arizona oh, by the way, the Pico guy had to cancel. He had a family emergency. So that whole event got canceled. He had to leave. But this group, the Arizona Near Space Research, launched a high altitude balloon. This balloon here was not meant to be a long distance. It goes up, goes super high, pops, comes back down. And then they have chasers that go out and find a payload. And speaking of payload, it has APRS, ADS-B, that's for planes. It had a video camera, and they put a 2-meter simplex crossband repeater on it. You come up on 440 and it comes out on 2-meter, and people were getting a kick out of that. It had a little repeater tone to it. And well, you know, I think probably a good hour into its travels, people were making little QSOs on that frequency. Yeah. It turns out that this balloon started south, then went east, and it was over by a town by Buckley, west of Phoenix. Phoenix? Yeah. So they were able to retrieve it. So I'm going to play this clip here. And I think, or is this a picture? Joanna, what? Oh yeah. She probably posted some of these too. But oh yeah, it is. It's okay. This is the launch of the video of the balloon. So here's the deal. I wanted to get a nice drone of this and then follow it. But when I got over there, it was taking them so long to fill this, and my battery was going, oh my God, I only got like 15 minutes on this battery. So I barely got it. Is that working? Yes. So you can see they got volunteers lined up, and they're holding parts of the payload there. And just count the payload on this rope or the tether. I mean, there's like all kinds of stuff. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, anyway, they launched it, and it took that. There's the East Hills there, and it went over to the east. Anyway. I believe on this one, they did have to file a, that they were launching this one. It wasn't like the smaller ones. Yeah. Okay, speaking of video, some of you might want to see what the train looks like. So I took this flyover. We'll go through this real quick. So this highway you see down below is north on the left and going south on the right. It takes you down to Yuma. And so the road here is that little dirt road is going directly west. That's actually marker 99. So it's just when you're following the mile markers south of town, that little turnout just happens to be 99. And that's our little cue to go in there and find this little dirt road. At nighttime, it's pitch black. So I'm coming in over the section that predominantly is occupied by all the quartz festers. And I can point out here by my cursor, this little area right here, there's Joel's trailer, Jim's trailer. There's the Frank and Karen's trailer, and that was Jeanette and Joanna, thank you. And then W6, Joe, WBJOE was right there. And I'm over in the campsite, which is, there's my tent, and that's the welcome tent. So the welcome tent is basically right in the middle of the area that we occupy. And I'm going to continue with this to the west and then pan up, and you can see you can go out to this BLM land as far as you want, miles and miles, and pick a spot and be at peace with yourself. I turned out to the east here just to get another view from the east. Once again, we take up about 70 acres for our area that just happens to be there. You can see there's a little session going on there. I think that was the day Red Cross was doing their free smoke detectors, but they couldn't just give them out. Part of the protocol was to they had to do instructions and show them what it's all about. I think I hit that wrong. Let me just go over here real quick. There we go. I hit the button. I just wanted to point out something here real quick. I'm losing altitude here on purpose. Oh, I see what I did wrong. Hang on a second. There we go. So here's my tent. There's the special event station, porta potties. And once again, they try to put all the camping people in that area because it's close to the facilities. A second. Yeah. I think I just clicked it one too many times. There we go. All right, that's good. We're yeah. All right, I'm waiting to see if this is going to continue the video, but it's got to catch up. Might be my internet connection here. I'm tethered to my phone, but oh, now it's all choppy. Anyway, oh, there we go. I'm heading kind of the southeast here, and I'm going to pan sideways with my drone here. A little cinematic view from this angle. Just to give you an idea, you'll notice that the foliage, those areas of foliage, that's what they call a wash in the desert, because when it rains, that's where the water goes. But when it's dried up, it's just a dried up wash. And you'll see that there's kind of a pattern. There's wash, RVs, a road, a wash, an RV, a road, and that's how everybody kind of lines up. In some areas, you'll see that it's just just sand and dirt. And then in other areas, it looks like Mars. The rocks are all over the place. You can see the nice cacti, a few of them out there. And anyway, coming in for landing. Trying to find, there we are. There's my tent. And of course, I have to be a little careful coming in because, oh, what's that right below me there? That 3-element beam. So I gotta be sure to miss that. Yeah. There I am peeking back out. I can view all this off my iPhone, so I don't have to actually look for it until I see it. It just comes down and I turn it off and I catch it in my hand. Anyway, at 3:45 in the afternoon, we have what's called happy hour. No drinks, I wish, but happy hour is the review of the day. Everybody comes over to area 1. That's area 1. There's 3 areas altogether where they do seminars and whatever. And this is crowded because this was the last day and everybody wanted their grand prize. ICOM donated I even forget what model it was. It was a high-fluent HF rig. I don't remember. As well as some other, I think they donated 5 or 6 V82s. I won one last year. They're really nice monoband 2-meter radio. Anyway, that's the quick summary on Quartz Fest. I suggest if you guys want to go out to the desert, enjoy. It's they already got the dates. It's January 21st, 27th of next year.